What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is, and welcome back to yet another video with me, man, Immersioholic. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 9 of my Carthaginian campaign for the Divided to Impera overhaul mod for Total War Rome 2. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience and bearing with me in the previous weeks, and honestly the previous months. There's been one thing after another that has delayed me being able to post content up to you guys. I make no promises on when I can upload content, but when I am capable of doing it, I try to do it as much as I can. So thank you so much for your continued support. I appreciate it as always. But anyway, without any further ado, let's get into this week's episode of Carthage. So we begin by doing an overview of our situation. It's been a couple episodes since we've done that, so recently we have basically conquered the majority of the Lusitanian area. We actually own the province of Lusitania. They have retreated up to the north to the city of Brigantium, but that is the final remnants of the Lusitani up here in this small little port town in the northwest area of the Iberian Peninsula. That is the final holdout of the Lusitani, but we don't know how many forces they have, so we will be sending a fleet up there soon to blockade them and do some scouting. You can see, though, in northern, central, and eastern Iberia, the Massalians, the Greeks, have actually made some serious gains in the area, and they are now our main rival in the area, although they aren't hostile just yet. We do have one of the Iberian tribes, the Vitones, that we liberated. He will be helping us to act as a bit of a buffer between our two territories, although we still do border the Massalians on the eastern coast. Speaking of which, all of these southern and southeastern areas of Iberia are directly under Carthaginian control, so it's very much akin to the Second Punic War, where the Carthaginians controlled the majority of Iberia. So we're about 60-40 with the Massalians and other Iberians, so we control the majority. We will be sending troops to the north. However, Hamilcar is organizing his forces to march back east. Instead of pursuing the Lusitanians, he will be marching his army to the border with Massalia for a secret mission that he is yet to reveal to his troops and officers. Very interesting. Meanwhile, back in the center of the Mediterranean, we have Syracuse that is holding out against the Second Roman Legion, which is encroaching on our Sicilian territories. We did wipe out a legion that took over Panormus, so now all of Sicily is actually under direct Carthaginian control. But the first Magonid army under Baricus of the Magonid family, he will be trying to recuperate his troops and reorganize them before the Second Roman Legion can march on them. Hopefully they don't. We do have troops stationed inside Syracuse as well, so hopefully that is enough to dissuade them for now to not attack the city, because we can't really handle it at this point. Meanwhile, the Romans don't have any other troops too close, but we can see in their capital that they are recruiting more troops very quickly. They have the 9th Legion, which is at full strength, that will be marching out in some direction. We don't know where just yet. Then they have the 1st Legion just north of Rome, which is also mustering more troops. So Romans are still coming strong. Back down in Africa, though, we have the pirates who have taken over the city of Leptis. This has been a very big blow to our economy. It has absolutely destroyed our grain supply. So we have the Second Republican fleet in conjunction with the Senate Guard of Carthage that will be marching towards the city to try and relieve it. This is led by General Hamilcar, who is the leader of the Senate faction, which is basically opposing the Barcids directly. We do have allies in the region that you saw me highlight there, but they have been extremely unhelpful throughout this whole campaign. Very frustrating, because I have been setting war targets, but it's been doing nothing so far. So we might have to deal with the Numidians at some point. However, back in Greece, things are actually looking pretty good. We've liberated the majority of Greece. Xanthippus has succeeded in his mission, it's safe to say. Athens and Sparta, the two jewels of Greece, have been liberated and are now under our direct and stable control. He is trying to recuperate some losses he recently took, because he also recently liberated the Thessalian League at Larissa, and then to the northwest he has liberated Epirus, which is now known as the League of Epirus. We're not too sure how well these factions will fare against the Illyrians in the area. The Romans have been kicked out entirely. They do have troops to the north, up in the mountains, but they don't have any actual land. The next target for Xanthippus will of course be Pella, to try and liberate Macedonia itself, because even though some people might argue it's not a technical part of Greece, it is at least very important to Greece, so we will have to try and see what we can do for the Macedonian people. Moving forward though, we see the Illyrians are harassing the coastlines of Greece. This also means that they have free reign to come and attack Sicilian coastlines when they want, so we will be trying to organize our navies later on in this episode to try and deal with them, but they really have a lot of navies, so it's actually quite problematic, and it could be a real pain. As I said, Xanthippus plans to march on Pella, and from there, instead of marching northeast, he's going to go northwest along the Illyrian coast, along the Adriatic, and he'll be trying to deal with the Illyrians directly. However, we do have a small hiccup in that region, with the Dardanoi actually declaring war on us. And this was a big deal for us initially because they are allied to the kingdom of the Odrysians, or the Odrysian kingdom, and so they are a very powerful faction. Thankfully, when we entered the war on the side of our ally, the Thessalian League, the Odrysians did not join, but that was very risky for sure. However, back in Africa though, the Senate Guard is now going to be supplemented by an emergency use of funds to recruit a lot of mercenaries, and they will be attacking the city of Leptis in conjunction with the Second Republican Fleet led by Bartos. Overall, it should be a pretty simple battle, and we're actually not even going to fight it manually because I'm kind of getting sick of dealing with these pirates. I've had a lot of battles against them. I haven't shown them all to you guys. I haven't even shown you guys everything in terms of what they've attacked, just because it's been basically a constant threat for the last like 50 or more turns in the campaign. And keep in mind, this is around turn 110, 120, I believe, so pirates are starting to get a little bit old for me. But we do wipe them out with a cheeky auto-resolve, and thankfully we can now try to organize our economy to get back on track. And of course we will just disband our mercenaries as needed as well. Leptis is a part of our core region, so it shouldn't have any public order issues. We just need to make sure we get the buildings converted back to what we want them to.
To speak words of strength.
The Lusitani actually come crawling for peace. This is going to be very interesting. We have been wanting to wipe them out completely because they've been such a thorn in our side. However, Hamilcar does extend them one offer of mercy in the form of being a client state of the Republic of Carthage, and what an honor it would be for them. However, the Lusitani in their typical stubbornness refuse any such concessions, and they only request a white peace, which is unacceptable to us. We have won the war against them as far as we're concerned, so there's no reason for us to let them get out of it without any real cost to, on their part. While we are trying to organize launching a final invasion against the Lusitani, we do have some rebellions that are popping up. The second Barcid army is going to be dealing with them, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. That's led by General Idabal. He's a very solid general overall. His troops aren't the best. He's recruiting a lot of auxiliary units. He's really relying on local Iberians, supplemented by some Numidians and Gauls. So he doesn't have the most stable troops, but overall he's doing quite well, and Hamilcar is marching east, so he's really going to have to prove himself in leading the invasion of the final Lusitani holdouts in the north, so hopefully he can handle it. But we do have rebellions happening, so the Iberians are clearly not happy with the harsh treatment that Hamilcar has forced upon them. But while that happens, the Third Republican Fleet, led by the most difficult name we have, I'm going to try to pronounce it here, Ep.9, yes. He is leading a blockade of the final city of the Lusitani, and it will be fairly effective in stopping them from recruiting a fleet. They can still recruit land troops, I believe, so it won't entirely slow them down. However, we do have some issues in that the Lusitani launch an attack on our fleet. Now, because it is a fleet that is blockading their naval port, you would think that would actually do really well in holding them back, but you're going to see very soon that we have some technical issues in dealing with it. But for this first battle at least, the Third Republican Fleet does actually stop them. and we do end up wiping out about a half-stack army. So overall, at least the first breakout attempt by the Lusitani fails miserably. We do wipe out those troops alongside their naval garrison. We will ransom the captives as it gives us a lot of money, and we are Carthage, so of course we like money. And moving back to Africa, we actually have the Second Republican Fleet move back to Sicily, and from there they're going to reorganize, get some more men and sailors back on the ships, resupply, and then from there they will begin sailing to the east to try and deal with these Illyrian navies that are floating around, causing all kinds of issues for our supply lines. The rest of Greece is not looking as good. Within just a couple turns, the Illyrians have launched a surprise counterattack against us, and actually they defeated the League of Epirus within a single swoop, which is kind of embarrassing for them, but I mean, it is what it is. They managed to take back Apollonia because they sent 2 full stack armies down into Epirus. So now Xanthippus is going to have to divert his invasion of Macedonia back to Epirus to deal with the Illyrian threat. If the Illyrians are allowed to continue to do what they like in the region, we risk losing all of our gains in Greece. Furthermore, Bartos, leading the Second Fleet, actually continues sailing east. He's not going to be strictly just stuck in Sicily. He does have to be a little bit more proactive in trying to hunt down the Illyrians. At this point, though, the Illyrian fleets are so small, like quite literally with their ships, they are afraid to take us on in a one-on-one engagement. So instead of hunting them down, we're actually going to have the fleet go ahead and attack a full-stack Illyrian army that is on transport ships and they don't have any escorts. So that's going to be an easy victory for us. We're going to go ahead and try and hunt them down, and then we'll march on Apollonia after that. We get a heroic victory against the Illyrians, and we end up wiping out their army, basically for free. We only lose 13 sailors, not a big loss whatsoever. We have spies set out in the region of Macedonia and Epirus. However, during the end turn phase, we have a counterattack by the Lusitani up here in the north, and this is where we have the technical issues that I spoke about earlier. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of what I mean exactly, so let's go ahead and skip into the footage. You can see that the Lusitani attacked us. However, they are not actually attacking us. This is really frustrating part that of a really frustrating thing that happens in Rome too sometimes, where you have your fleet blockading the enemy. They somehow manage to initiate an attack against you, but they actually don't have to come out and attack you. So now my fleet is just staring at the enemy while they're staring at us on land. It doesn't make any sense at all because we're blockading them, but I mean, it's just Rome 2 things at this point. There's nothing that we can do, so after waiting for a few minutes to hope that the enemy would somehow be able to attack us, they can't, and so we're going to have to withdraw, and that means we actually technically lose the battle. So our fleet is going to have to sail away, and we're actually going to take a fair bit of attrition because in the Rome 2 Infinite Wisdom, our navy will retreat out deep into the Atlantic Ocean, so we're going to suffer some pretty bad attrition out there. But yeah, that was really frustrating, and it happened to me quite a few times just trying to blockade this city, so eventually I'll give up and I'll have to recall that fleet. But if you've had that happen in your campaigns, let me know. Anyway, now that Hamilcar has resupplied his army, he's recruited some more local Iberians, he is now ready to tell his officers and troops where they will be marching. They will be marching deep up north, past the Ebro, and far beyond that, up into southern Gaul, going past the cities of Narbo and Massalia, and they will be marching directly into the Po Valley, through the Alps, into the Po Valley, and then into Italy itself. That's right, in an unprecedented, never before seen march, Hamilcar is going to invade Italy itself directly, and eventually he will march on Rome. And from there, we hope to finally annihilate the Roman threat once and for all. And from there, we will be getting into the later stages of the campaign. At least that's the plan. Meanwhile, while Hamilcar is doing that invasion, Xanthippus will deal with the Illyrians. Hopefully he can take Epirus very quickly, deal with Palla, and then march on the Illyrian homelands. And then from there, he will sail across the Adriatic and then join Hamilcar in the invasion of Italy. Hamilcar does some extensive negotiating with the Messalians for some military access, but the Greeks are incredibly stubborn, very pompous and up themselves, and so they are not willing at all to do any kind of negotiations with us. So Hamilcar is going to do what Hamilcar does best, which is ignore what other people think, and he is going to march his troops directly through the lands regardless of the consequences. He is sick of fighting these Romans. He has been fighting with them literally all of his life, as has his father before him, Hannibal. So he begins his march towards the Alps. Hopefully we'll see more of that in the coming episodes, but we won't in this episode. What we will be doing this episode, though, is trying to focus on dealing with these bloody Illyrians. They've been very frustrating in trying to deal with. And so we have the Second Republican fleet, led by the Magonid family, working in conjunction with Xanthippus. They've been actually cooperating quite heavily with one another, and now they launch a coordinated assault on the city of Apollonia. There is a full stack army of Illyrians inside the settlement. This is going to be a very big battle. Let's do it. Here's a close-up of Xanthippus himself. You can see the only Spartan in his personal bodyguard, of course, leading the front with his big emblem on his shield there, looking absolutely badass. He is 55 years old at the time, by the way. He's getting quite old now, but he's still fighting strong and leading the men as he should. Here's a close-up of the town. You can see that the Illyrians are trying to hold out against us along the coast and on the western end of town there. Here are the transport ships from the army that is stationed inside the city. They're actually stationed on transport ships and not on land already, except their cavalry is. So we are trying to rush forward with our own navy, the second fleet, which is trying to hurry up. But the transport ships are already basically in the bay and in the harbor of the town. So we're going to be trying to really rush forward as quickly as we can, try and catch them off guard, and hopefully wipe out as much of the army as we can. Meanwhile, on land, Xanthippus sends his forces in three-pronged attacks. He'll be attacking from the center with this blue group. Then towards the beach, he'll have more troops going that way. And then to the left, further inland, we'll see the Lusitani warriors going in and trying to get some good kills and outflanking maneuvers against the Illyrians. But the Illyrians are a little bit different. They're not like the Romans. They don't just sit back and wait for us to do what we're going to do and then try to out-discipline us. Instead, they're going to charge out against us. And not only will they charge against our main line of hoplites, but they're actually going to send their cavalry and some skirmishers and warriors against our Lusitani troops. These are the Iberians that are not very well armored or shielded. So this was actually a really intelligent move by the enemy. And they're going to get a lot of free kills for this because our swordsmen are just not capable of withstanding such a solid charge. We do have forces in the area, but they are split apart quite badly. And the Illyrians notice this, and they will actually slit through the middle of our lines and just go ahead and attack our skirmishers directly. And not only do they attack them, but then they try to continue maneuvering around through our back lines. Thankfully, Xanthippus himself is close by. He'll charge in with some reserve cavalry, and they will deal with the Illyrian cav quite quickly. To try and stop further outflanking maneuvers, Xanthippus orders the Spartan main line to charge forward down the center of the streets. And then along the right-hand side, we have our Carthaginian hoplites backed up by our Greek mercenary hoplites. And they will march along the beach and try to intercept the transport ships that have just dropped off more troops, although they are running deep into the middle of town as soon as they land anyway. Speaking of transports, though, only about half of the Illyrian army managed to land their transports in time. Our fleet was actually very, very quick. They used double time the entire way. And because of this little forced march sailing, I guess you could call it, they were going to take massive casualties before they can even get on land. And even though they are extremely close, the heavy armor and weaponry of the enemy forces them to basically sink and drown. They basically act as their own anchor. And so because we were able to outmaneuver them, the Illyrians lose a massive chunk of their forces very early on. Now the battle is really getting into its full swing. Xanthippus is trying to lead an attack on the left wing of the Illyrians, while the Lusitani swords try to help him out. We also have some skirmisher cavalry that would be marching deep along the left-hand side. These are our Tarantines. They'll be trying to chase down the enemy troops before they could turn back and try to outflank us even more. And then we also have our ships coming in quite close. These are our archer ships. So they'll be dealing some pretty serious damage against the enemy skirmishers that did land on the beach. You can see here, they're getting cut down with just a few volleys from our ships. And they're very low armored, so they're going to get wiped out extremely quickly. Our Carthaginian and Greek hoplites will just begin marching up the beach without any opposition at all, really. And they will act as an outflanking force as well to the center of the Illyrian formation, which is basically inside the main street. And they'll be facing off against our Spartans. The Spartans are leading the attack along the center right here. They are entering a little bit of a crescent shape. You can see the Illyrians are coming out in a nice big charge, and we will be ready to receive them, and we will also initiate some counter charges shortly as well. You will see our hoplites begin moving forward. Yep, there they are right now. We begin moving forward with our right side of the formation, followed by the left at the top of the screen. The Illyrians are not at all excited on the prospect of fighting Spartan hoplites head-on, so many of them begin running away instantly. But then we do encounter some of their more disciplined and heavy troops, and the real fighting begins. The Spartan hoplites begin slogging against the Illyrian hoplites and their skirmishers who are hiding back in the second line. The Spartans will take some casualties from this fighting, but they are brave, strong, and extremely disciplined, and so they push forward. Meanwhile, our Lusitani warriors alongside the Carthaginian hoplites begin to outflank the Illyrians, and as soon as they become surrounded, the Illyrians break en masse, and their entire army and garrison gets wiped out and killed to the last man. Epirus is liberated yet again, hopefully this time for the last time. But props to Xanthippus, he gets the job done. "6,000 Carthaginians were led against 5,200 Illyrians, and we only lost about 100 men. Not bad at all. We did get kind of lucky in catching a lot of the enemy troops on transport ships, but I mean, that is what it is. And the majority of our losses were with the Spartans, which kind of sucks, but at the same time, they're pretty replaceable as long as we're in the Greek area. So we're actually going to loot the city because Xanthippus and the Carthaginians in general hate the Epirites, especially the Carthaginian units inside of his army. They have a long history of causing Carthage grief in Sicily, and so the Carthaginians, despite having liberated them previously, are unleashed upon the city of Apollonia and loot it entirely. While it does fill the coffers of Carthage, it will cause further issues in the future. The Second Republican Fleet begins continuing the chase down of the Illyrian fleets yet again. The Illyrians retreat down south, though, towards the very center of the Mediterranean, which is a little bit different to where they've been retreating to, and so the leader of the fleet, Bartos, does continue to pursue them relatively cautiously, although he is kind of getting sick of hunting them down. And so even though they retreat into deep waters that have some issues in dealing damage to our ships, he will continue chasing them. Hopefully he'll catch them. However, in the meantime, the Romans launch a surprise invasion of Sicily, and their first legion marches against the first Magonid army. Here we are on the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. I know this was a very quick battle that just appeared out of nowhere. The Romans did initially retreat out of Sicily. However, the first legion that we saw stationed just above Rome has marched down through Italy and is now attacking our first army. This is led by General Barracas, the leader of the Magonid faction. And his army, while it is decent, the Roman legion sent against him is actually excellent in countering our army. You'll see why shortly. Thankfully, though, he has this massive hill and defensive formation that he's going to be able to utilize against the Romans. He actually already has Iberians ahead of the enemy, ahead of his own forces, ahead of the friendly troops, and he'll also have cavalry march forward up to try and support the Iberians. So that way, he absolutely controls the top of this massive hill. It's basically the side of a mountain. And then he'll be able to position his army in any defensive formation he needs to, because we are on the defensive in this case. The Romans are invading our lands and they are attacking us. And we can see them marching uphill quite quickly in the distance there. As the army gets closer to us, we begin to see their troops, and you may understand why I've said that this army is actually very good at countering the Carthaginian troops. They have a lot of skirmishers, they have a lot of spearmen, they even have war dogs, and they have a lot of cavalry, about 5 units in total. This is excellent for countering Carthaginian troops, which focus heavily on cavalry tactics. So this is the first time the Romans have really tried to actually put in effort to counter whatever it is that the Carthaginians typically throw at them. We do have some good heavy troops in our army. We have a few Brutian forces alongside some pretty good hoplites. So hopefully our infantry can still hold their own while our cavalry try to deal with the enemy cav. But the Carthaginian cav that we have are actually quite limited. They're not as good as, say, the army under the command of Hamilcar. So hopefully Barracas can lead a good defense against the Romans, and he can use the defensive terrain to his advantage, which it seems like he is for now. We have our first line, I guess you could call it, made mostly of hoplites, and then he has his reserves of the Brutian troops. We could see a close-up of his personal bodyguard right here, and we could see him just behind in the second line right here with his own leopard skin as well. It seems the leopard skin is a favorite of the Carthaginian generals, and he is no exception. On the left-hand side of our flank, you can see our Iberian troops have retreated up into the forest. They will be trying to launch a surprise attack against the Roman cavalry, because we only have 1 unit of Carthaginian cavalry, and they'll be acting as bait. We have some Sicilian spearmen and swordsmen nearby that will be trying to offer support as well and hold down our left-hand flank. And then we also have a contingent of Greek hoplites on the central left of our formation. Meanwhile, moving down our line, we have another contingent of hoplites. These are the Libya-Phoenician hoplites, so they're not as good as like pure Carthaginian hoplites, but hopefully they'll do. And then on the far right-hand side, we have some more Sicilian spearmen and swordsmen. They are backed up by some cavalry. We have Tarentine cavalry, and we also have Libyan cav. So not amazing cav, but some decent units. And then we have Barracas himself in the rear with his personal bodyguard. And then in the second line, as I said earlier, we have 3 contingents of Brutian infantry, which are basically like Roman infantry. They have swords with large shields. They throw javelins in before they get engaged in melee. They're really, really good, solid troops, and they've been doing well for Hamilcar, so hopefully they can do well for Barracas in this battle as well, although our army is not veteranized at all. The Romans begin by launching their cavalry against our own on the deep flanks. We were expecting this, and our cavalry will try to retreat to draw the enemy cav forward, and through that we will have our Iberians release their javelins. The Roman skirmishers begin engaging our front line. They'll get quite a few free kills, as we don't really have any skirmishers of our own in this army, so that's a big mistake on our part. And the enemy cav on the left-hand flank over here will actually charge against our infantry, although our Sicilian troops will make a hole for our own cavalry to slide on in through, and we will get some counter downhill charges against the Roman units. So we are taking some pretty big losses, but we are outsmarting the Romans at the very least. Their commander is certainly not the wisest of them all, as he is charging against a very well and entrenched position by the Carthaginian forces. So the Romans definitely are fighting quite literally an uphill battle. Meanwhile, on our left-hand flank, the Roman cavalry is being defeated. We are drawing them away and trying to separate them from the rest of their army. The Roman infantry, though, are engaging our own and are actually doing very, very well, cutting through a lot of our lower-tier units. although our Sicilian swordsmen have very large shields and good armor, so they will hold for quite a while. And then our hoplites will begin pushing down the hill as well to try and fixate the Roman infantry and stop them from trying to outflank us. If we could get them stuck in this very tight, close hand-to-hand combat, and hopefully it can make the Romans be even less mobile than what they already are. You can see them charging uphill against our hoplites, so our hoplites receive the charge of the Romans, and even though the Romans are very well trained and disciplined, we have the higher ground and our hoplites are in a tighter formation, so that's going to come in very handy in disrupting their charge. Our Sicilians get stuck against some Greeks that are being recruited by the Romans. Now they're actually recruiting very high tier elite swordsmen from the Greeks, so that's going to be concerning for us. We're going to definitely have to outflank them and try and get some free skirmisher shots on them if possible in the future. Meanwhile, our general is also charging downhill alongside our cavalry to take on the Roman general himself. He also has some Roman cavalry in the area alongside some minor infantry units that will be trying to support. Going to be a little bit of an issue, however, our general is an excellent bodyguard unit, so hopefully he can match the Roman general. We then have a small breakthrough on our left-hand flank. We managed to defeat some of the Roman units, and we begin trying to outflank them as quickly as we can, mainly with our Iberians. You can see in this blue circle back here, we have 3 of our Iberian swordsmen contingents getting held up by a single Roman, but we will peel away and try to continue surrounding the Roman army. Our hoplites are doing exactly what they need to, which is just holding their position. As long as they can continue to do that, our swordsmen should be able to outflank the Romans. But you can see, despite the outflanking, the Romans are holding on. They're really, really tough. They are hard to crack, and their troops are very good. They have a lot of principes as well, which is excellent for countering our hoplite lines. And they are, as you can see, making small gaps in between our formations. In this little blue square, even you can see that the Romans are starting to outflank us here. Further down the line, the elite Greek swordsmen are also doing very well against us, although now they are at least surrounded by our own troops. We have some Brutians that are attacking them from the rear. We also have our general further down the hill engaging against the Roman units. He's done quite well so far, although his supporting cavalry has retreated. He only has a Sicilian spearman unit close by. So the Romans are also low on troops in this area, however they are trying to surround him. So what we're going to have General Barracas do is actually lead a direct charge against the Roman general. The Roman general is not ready for it. He's caught off guard by the speed of the charge, and he gets killed in the initial impact as well. So his personal bodyguard will begin routing shortly once they realize that their leader has been taken out, and they will not be coming back from a retreat. So that's going to be very helpful for us and deals a massive blow of morale damage to the entire Roman army once the rest of their forces end up finding out. We could see more of the enemy troops beginning to waver, and now the battle is really starting to wrap up in our favor. You can see a lot of the enemy troops are starting to rout off in massive columns in all directions, and we have completely and utterly surrounded the enemy. We have some very brutal hand-to-hand combat going on here. You can see, even though we have some elite Greek swordsmen taking on our Brutian infantry here with these scooter shields, it doesn't really matter. The Greeks are surrounded and they will get killed eventually. We are taking some pretty heavy casualties though, so you got to respect the Romans despite their lack of strategy and overall strategic planning. They are tough, and they took on a really difficult battle. They took on a solid army in a very defensible position, and they pushed us to the brink, so you gotta respect the Romans for that. We end up losing 1,000 men in that battle, whereas the Romans lose essentially their entire legion, so that is good news for us. Although we do end up losing some pretty critical units like our cavalry, and we lost quite a few of our Sicilians, and the Iberians took some pretty big damage as well. We will end up ransoming the captives just so we can get ourselves some more money. We are obviously always in need of it for this campaign, and so we will try to do that basically at every turn, unless roleplay demands otherwise. However, the Second Republican fleet, in its bid to chase down the Illyrians, has been outsmarted by the barbarians, and they've actually managed to launch a three-pronged attack against our single fleet. The Second Republican fleet is now fighting for its life. Let's jump into this big one. Here we are in the heart of the Mediterranean, quite literally at this point. We're in the dead center. The Illyrians have completely surrounded our fleet here, and this is our most important fleet. We do have two fleets, but this is our most veteranized fleet, and this is our most needed fleet because it protects the African coastline as well as our Sicilian coastline. So the battle is going to begin with the Illyrians initially split up, so you could see that we're going to try to make a dart to the right to try and capture or catch some of their troops off guard. However, two of their fleets will be combining very quickly, very early on. We really try our hardest to try and catch down one of the fleets before they can reunite with the rest of the Illyrian ships. However, our troops were sailing as hard as possible, but the ships that we were in were just way too big, and because of their size, they just didn't have the speed that the Illyrians do. They're using very small ships. So you can see in this initial engagement of the left-hand wing of the Illyrians, we deal massive damage to their ships, and our large melee-based ships ram the enemy vessels, and they actually explode on impact. They take on such a massive amount of force from our own ships that they can't handle it, and they get essentially blown up instantly. So that's very, very good for us. But as we get through that first line of Illyrians, the rest of the battle begins to bog down into a bit of a slog. We are trying to force a second line of formation for our own ships. However, the left-hand side of our forces is getting bogged down, as I said earlier, and the final wave of the Illyrians is also beginning to merge into the battle with some more reinforcements off there in the distance as well. So now our troops, despite starting off the battle really, really well, are really going to get quite literally stuck. And as they get stuck, they're going to be forced into melee boarding actions, and they'll also just be outrammed by the many numerous Illyrian ships, which really outnumber us quite heavily. We have the majority of our skirmisher ships on the left-hand flank as well. They're getting boarded because they are just skirmishers, so the Illyrians notice and try to target them with boarding actions. Despite this, they do try to hold off for as long as possible, and they are pretty well equipped, so it's not an entirely one-sided affair. But you can see here with these red arrows indicating where our ships are trying to go, but they're getting stuck in, especially those circles I'm highlighting. I mean, the ships I'm highlighting with the blue circles. Those are our friendly ships that are being stuck. They literally cannot move, or at least they are really restricted in their movement. So the Illyrians have really mastered the tactic to slow down our really big heavy ships and deal serious damage to them. However, their ships are very, very small, and so even with these reinforcements for the Illyrians coming in, you can see our troops are given attack orders on them, and when they do get these attack orders going, they will deal really massive damage to their ships. We send off the fire pots against them as well, which almost blow them up initially. I'm surprised that ship managed to take on that fire pot, but then they get hammered by the side by our excellent sailors and their techniques. And thankfully, the reinforcements of the Illyrians are defeated quite quickly, and the rest of their fleet ends up trying to retreat en masse after seeing their reinforcements get cut down so easily. However, Carthaginian fleet has suffered massive casualties. This was certainly a Pyrrhic victory for Carthage. And here we have it, about a quarter of our fleet was taken out, so perhaps not entirely Pyrrhic victory, although it was pretty serious and substantial. The Illyrians really outsmarted us on this one, and they demonstrated a very clear weakness for our ships, which is that if we are outnumbered, we can be quite literally bogged down and surrounded. So we really need to be more mindful in the future of where their fleets are positioned. So our overconfidence was almost our undoing over the mastery of the Mediterranean. Moving forward though, the second Barcid army begins marching towards Brigantium. The third Republican fleet will have to return back to Alispo to try and recuperate and recover from the attrition they've suffered out there in the Atlantic Ocean. But that and more will have to wait until the next episode. So again, I would like to thank you all so much for your patience in waiting on my content to come out. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.